So first off, though, let me introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Schall, and I am the Global Forecasting Strategist here at Exactly. So I will be running us through this webinar today, along with Bailey Fessler, who is our Director of Revenue Operations here at Exactly. But I'll let her introduce herself in a little bit after we get more people coming in. But right now, Bailey, the thing that I would really love to know is what your favorite kind of apple is.
Man, this is literally like my favorite icebreaker. It's the best question. Everyone has a favorite kind of apple, whether you know it or not. It somehow gets people passionate. It was Honeycrisp for a really long time, but I think I've been veering more Pink Lady lately because like she's tart, she's sweet, she's all the things. What's yours?
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I tend to go on the tart side. I am a Granny Smith girl. So, yeah, the yellow or the green apple is what I love. So I would love to see some of you guys share in the chat if you've got a passion about apples. What is the apple that's most passionate for you?
Oh, we got some
Let's
Honeycrisp,
see.
Cosmic Crisp fans. Those are,
I
yeah.
haven't had the Cosmic Crisp. To try that. I do love Honeycrisp. Yeah. And Pink Lady sounds good. I don't know if I've had Pink Lady. My kids love the yellow ones, like the light yellow. I don't know
Oh,
if you,
like I know which ones you're talking about. I don't know
yeah.
which ones they're called. Oh, we got a Fuji. That's a good
Gee.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to go get some apples.
I know. Very good. All right. Well, as I said, thank you so much for joining us today on this call. Bailey, we would love to have you introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Bailey Fessler. I'm the Director of Revenue Operations here at Exactly. I've been at Exactly about a year and a half now, and here at Exactly, I look after kind of that traditional sales ops function. We call it our business partners, as well as the quote to cash team, as well as compensation.
Yeah.
And it's just been a super fun year and a half. Steph and I collaborate on all things forecasting and
Yes. Oh, we love having Bailey here. Having her as an addition has been amazing. As the global forecasting strategist, I'm all things forecasting from working with our internal team to our prospects, customers, really, speaking on best practices and really driving value for our customers. So it has been a joy to learn and collaborate with Bailey. So today, you guys are going to get so many great nuggets from her as we talk through the 10 data sources that every accurate sales forecast needs. So essentially what we're going to be doing is looking at the lenses in which, data is at the foundation. We know it's got to be clean, the pipeline's got to be healthy, it's got to be sufficient. And so how should we be looking at this data to help us be more accurate? So we're going to give you a look at what we do exactly, but also what many of our customers are doing as well. So as we jump into these 10 lenses, Bailey, the first one is really looking at the understanding, the deals, understanding what are the strengths and weaknesses of the opportunity. For us, we have an opportunity score, really helping to understand, how are opportunities converting and are they following that process? And, being able to really keep that finger on the pulse of what is happening on this deal, what needs to happen. What do you think are some really important things that need to go into really helping you surface what that risk is and what needs to happen on a deal?
yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from understanding some of like your business's core KPIs and things like what is our average time to close a deal? Where did this opportunity come from? What was the source? Is it something, were we calling it in our forecast in a prior quarter? And understanding all those nuances as well as, just knowing what are the standards as a company? What are our, I guess it goes back to those KPIs and knowing
Yes.
what makes those who, yeah.
Yeah, well, I love how you said even just knowing, like, was this an opportunity that pushed from a previous quarter? That there's so much knowledge in that, depending on, after you push a deal so many times, how does that decrease the likelihood to win?
Mhm.
How about as it looks, RevOps is all about process and following that process and enforcing the process. How have you seen being able to leverage a health score, being able to help you understand what has been done on an opportunity, what still needs to be done to keep moving that deal forward? How do you use that today at Exactly?
Yeah, and well, as you well know, we have quite a robust sales tech stack, like most RevOps companies are dealing with, and it's a matter of how do you combine inputs and sentiments and things that where you're not asking a rep to do administrative inputs, and it's things that we can glean at a 30,000-foot level, like when was the last interaction, when was
Mhm.
the last meeting, all those things that can kind of contribute to that velocity sort of separate from true deal inspection. Because if you're RevOps, you don't have typically you don't have the capacity to go into every single deal and opportunity.
Absolutely. So understanding, is it the right account? Are we following the selling process and the methodology? Is the right activities happening? When was the last meeting? When's the next meeting? Are you
Yeah.
engaged with the economic buyer? All those things are gonna, when that's not happening, it's gonna surface risk. But for us, I know it really is driving strategy too, to understand when I go into the next meeting, what questions do I need to ask? Or as a manager, how do I need to help strategize with my rep
Yeah.
on this opportunity?
Yeah, and I think that's something we've really enforced at Exactly is like we don't do anything alone. No one's,
Yeah.
expected to win or lose alone.
Yeah, I know. I love that we bring the village in. So it's that for us, that health score and understanding the deal strengths and weaknesses is who in the community, who in the village needs to get eyes on this to understand what we need to do to move this forward. And
Yeah.
that could be
Well,
executive alignment or whatever.
and I think that brings up such a good point too, because that's something that's always changing in every business is like, what does a good deal look like? What does a healthy deal look like? And if you're not constantly reevaluating that, then like you might be missing out on some emerging verticals.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, I love that for sure. So being able to optimize what's surfacing, what the score
Mhm.
looks like and all of that is key. Love that. All right. So now that we've got the strengths and weaknesses of the opportunity, we're starting to understand what the risks are. What do we need to move the deal forward? We're starting to clean up the pipeline. So with that, we need to make sure that we have the coverage. So, you're given your number every quarter and it's okay, what do we got to do? We're, putting our forecast together, but it's, do I have enough pipeline to cover this number? Is it clean? Is it healthy? Is it sufficient? When it comes to coverage, why is it so important to understand if you have enough?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's nothing scarier in a forecast than being in a position of like every single opportunity you're in a must-win situation. Um, and that total pipeline coverage can help you get that visibility into what do we have that's early stage that might progress, what's still out there, what historically what have we been able to convert, knowing, things that we know from our deal strengths and weaknesses, like what can we reasonably, expect to progress within the quarter. And having that total coverage just like helps give you such a clear picture of where you need to execute and what all you have available to execute on.
Yeah. Well, and it used to drive me crazy how it used to be like the coverage, like if you have 3x pipeline, then you're solid.
Well,
But
and that's not
it's
true for every business.
no,
Like that's
yes, it's not. And it's like they would always say that, but it's like that means that the average rep has a 33% win rate. And that's a good win rate. The average rep
yeah.
is not closing 1 in 3 deals. And so that might equate that they need 4 or 5x pipeline. You hope that that's not the case. But it's being able to understand what is the coverage needed for your team based on their individual win rates
Yeah.
and
And
their successes.
And I think it helps you give that insight too, and like helps you hone in on like what is the total pipeline coverage that we need, especially like if you start to see trends of early stage pipeline not converting or things not getting past qualification steps, it helps you refine some of those upstream processes as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. Very good. Okay, so now we've got pipeline coverage figured out. We got to make our call. So in terms of making a forecast call, you hear sometimes like, oh, calling your number, that's easy. But as soon as you call that number, that gets rolled up and it's being reported to the board, and then you're tied to that number to hit that number. So in your experience, what do you believe is kind of the best practices that go into being able to call that number and understand how we're going to get there?
Totally. And I think it definitely comes from looking at those two first initial pieces, kind of having that knowledge of your teams. And, like the forecast call is something that should fluctuate, and it's okay for it to fluctuate. If you're having a weekly call, as you get further in the quarter, you're ideally getting more and more laser focus honed in on knowing specifically which deals. But like that initial forecast call, first one in the quarter, a lot of it could be like speculative. Like if you call a number, you might have 3, 4, 5 different ways to get there. But as you progress further and further in the quarter, it kind of becomes a single linear path. But the key is, in my opinion, calling a conservative but realistic number.
Yeah.
And it's like sandbagging comes to mind, or people get upset about sandbagging. But the flip side of that, I think, is a much missing a call is a much worse outcome than maybe
Absolutely.
being
Yeah.
conservative initially.
And it's like if you've got, here's my worst case scenario, my worst case call, then you can do the best case. But for a worst case call, it's like one thing I know we have moved towards in the 5 years that I've been here at Exactly is really deal backing that number. In that it's
Mhm.
like, old school was you're just like, I'm good for 400K, like sign me up. But no one knows how we're going to get there. You're just kind of,
Yeah.
holding your finger out in hoping against all hope that you're going to pull a deal in. But being
Yeah.
able to understand that path.
And especially at the beginning of a quarter, like you might have a gap to that number that isn't deal backed, but that's why that total pipeline coverage is so key, because then you can see those multiple paths to get to what you're calling, knowing what makes a good deal at your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. And we'll get to, as we go through these 10, a couple of things that is when you have the data in front of you, you can, even though the deals might not be there, you can get visibility into what's coming. So we'll get to that uh, next right now. So one of the things that 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 goes into, we don't have the pipeline here yet is because depending on what your sales cycle time is, you might open and win a deal within the same quarter. So that deal doesn't exist on day one of the quarter, but it'd be great if you could forecast what was coming so that the board could have a number to rest on. And so this is where being able to understand and get visibility of what is coming in based on your historical data. So this is where I start to say, the whole pull of art in science, the art is the wisdom of the experience. Bailey, your experience of engaging with teams and their successes, knowing the teams, the sales leader, knowing their reps, their directors, in understanding, where that intuition bias comes in at, who's our happy ears, who's our sandbaggers, but being able to get visibility from the historicals to know with pulling science in of this is what you've done the last 3 quarters. This is what you've created and closed the last 4 quarters. How is it helpful to you to be able to have visibility of that on day one to help make a forecast?
I mean, it's huge. Like seasonality in a business is huge. If there's a major event that typically brings in a lot of pipeline, or, like historically, like a lot of companies, Q4, that you're going to get more customers, or if you have a lot of renewals in one quarter, like that historical view is everything. This was actually something that was, it could be hard to pinpoint, especially when I was at like Marketo, where we had sometimes a 30-day or even faster sales cycle, for like a 20K ASV things could be happening very quickly and that this could be very hard to pinpoint. There was a lot of seasonality in the business. So having that historical view to leverage and knowing what we know, or what we know happens for our business, like it helps, give our execs a little more confidence in that forecast call as well.
Absolutely. But I love it, like even all the way down to the rep level, helping reps know, when you realize like, oh, a deal pushed, and this is the deal that I have been counting on, this is going to make my whole quarter, and that pushes or it gets lost and it's devastating. And then sometimes they just throw their hands up like, oh, I'm done. I'm just going to coast for the rest of this quarter and I'll start over next quarter. And it's like for us being able, managers knowing and reps knowing that it's no, like you've been able to find pipeline and close it in the last 40 days of the quarter. Don't stop. Your quarter's not done. It's not made. You've got potential in front of you, and there's data that is holding up based on your success, not just this is what reps like you have done, but what you've actually achieved and performed.
It adds a little more proof so that, you can kind of squash the hope is not a strategy rebuttal from
Yeah, but I've got data that's supporting.
I've got data to show
saying.
that this is what we've done and what we can do.
Yeah, not just hoping on a wing and a prayer that it's just
because that's what it sounds like,
Yes.
to come ops leaders or others. I'm like, this is my call. There's a 200K gap, but I'll find it. You're like,
Oh, sure.
how?
And have you done this before? Yeah, for sure. So that's so helpful to be able to know what's coming, and be able to put that get 2020 vision right away on the first day of the quarter. So as we talked about, if your forecast call tends to be your worst case call and you're trying to get that deal back as soon as possible, what we like to do too, our fifth lens is our best case call. So this is where it becomes, okay, if you're categorizing your forecast as, all right, we've got commit, or you might say best case or upside, for us, we like to get to commit supporting that forecast call as soon as possible, at least by the first half of the quarter. But for a best case scenario, that's where it's pulling in and looking at, okay, if you closed all of your commit and all of your upside, and you have your create and closing quarter, what does that number look like?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. And it's not like, sometimes I think people see that and think it's like, okay, this is like my swing for the fences. Like I close everything that's in my total pipeline. No, like there's still an element of being like realistic, even like with your best case as well. But it's like, okay, let's assume everything goes right. My forecast call, what can I get on top of that? What other deals do I know that are like knowing my business, that are showing me the right signals that could reasonably, be completed within the quarter, but maybe are still early stage right now. It's how do you still identify those things, in addition to the create and close, and kind of build off of that.
Yeah. I love that. So it's giving you potential, those deals of, we know there's going to be surprises. So like, even if the forecast call gets you to your number, we know there's going to be deals that we are, relying on that are going to take longer to close. There's going to be deals that maybe the RevOps leader decides to leave, and it kind of sends everything, wonky, and that slows down the process. You have to have those, we've got to be considering and thinking about and continuing to work on what are the rest of the deals in the pipeline that we can have as backup. So
yeah, and I mean, even some of those deals that maybe aren't a part of your forecast call that are higher risk because of things like your ideal customer profile or being outside of that, maybe they're showing you the right buying signs. Those are something that could be included in your best case call.
Yeah. Oh, I love that it's like, okay, traditionally we don't close this at a high rate, but everything that they're doing and saying and the conversations that we're having, but I'm still a little afraid to commit this because our win rate and success rate on this kind of account is lower. So let's leave that. But everything else is showing, all the lights are gold. So I love that. Yeah. That it's like, but those are kind of set off on the upside that maybe we're not it's not part of the path for that forecast call, but it hits that best case number. Very good. Okay. So we've got the calls, we've got the worst case, we've got the best case, but now it's really starting to look at identifying the risk of the pipeline in the forecast. So it's like, okay, what someone might be calling, how does that, maybe, with hedging, with the reps rolling up and then the management rolling up and getting all the way up to that top line number, we start to see risk and pipeline gaps. So talk a little bit about how you're managing that exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of it is building on some of those other steps as well, and like knowing our business to help identify that risk, or trying to help surface those reps that are maybe just like their whole call is made up of one deal, and you're like,
Mm.
okay, if we're in this make or break situation, how can we help you, build additional pipeline, or can we help you get engaged with the right people, and it kind of comes from understanding what makes up a good deal, and like kind of getting into like those flags and alerts that we have set up and like, okay, you're calling this, but it's kind of not showing us the right signals, or it seems unrealistic. And a lot of that is kind of getting to that point in the quarter, where I think about this coming into play is where, maybe the forecast call should be fully deal backed, but we're still not. And we're
Mm.
getting later in the quarter. And it's like, okay, we either need to lower your call, or what can we move in to help support this?
Mhm.
What needs to happen in some of these upside deals you have to make them commits?
Yeah, it's like that's when you need to start playing around and seeing, what do we have for backup and what is the data then that's supporting that. And that's where it's key too of being able to get the visibility of the roll up to know that it's like not just what are the reps rolling up, what is the reps committing, because we know that there's happy ears and sandbagging, but being able to visualize that hedging.
Yeah.
um,
And facilitating those conversations too, right? Because like if managers and reps are having differences in what, maybe if I'm the rep and you're the manager, if I'm committing a deal and you're not, we need to have that conversation to understand,
yes.
why I believe I can find.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I love about how we do it and many of our customers do it, is being able to have those different um, um, forecast categories, that it's like, here's as a rep, I'm committing this, but as a director, this is an upside deal for me. And then maybe for the RVP, it's just pipeline. So being able to use those as coaching moments, like you were saying, but to have the visibility so that it is truly, we're rolling up and deal backing that forecast and using those as teaching moments
Yeah.
to bring the reps along.
And it does give us that, specifically for this one for identifying risk, like we can inspect top down and bottoms up.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Love it. All right. So one of the things you mentioned was, that's when you kind of start playing and figuring out what potentially backup deals you have. One of the other things is your pull forward deals. So, what are those deals that maybe are expected to close next quarter that have the momentum? It's the right account. All the right things are happening. We know time kills all deals. Being able to identify those and bring the village in to see what do we need to get done to bring this deal across the line this quarter. How has that been helpful for your team to be able to work with our sales leaders to be able to surface that and have those conversations early versus waiting at the end of the quarter when you realize we're not going to hit the number? What do we do?
And this can be like a really tricky one to conceptualize too,
Mhm.
especially because if a deal is sitting in a future quarter, then sometimes the conversation can become like, well, why isn't it in Q1? And it's like, well, it's not a Q1 deal, but yeah, it's like how do you identify those ones that have potential to possibly be fast movers, and then also not pull them out of the process? So, like we have a certain close date that we leverage to identify those so that our data integrity stays whole and the opportunity is still showing in the quarter that it's primarily forecast for, but we still have it identified as a potential path
Yeah.
for the current quarter that we're in. And that can be a hard balance to
Mm.
strike because I mean, you've heard that conversation too of like,
Yeah.
well, then why don't you move the close date? It's like, well, this is that category.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, okay, maybe at the first month of the quarter, it still qualifies as this is pull forward. This is next quarter. Like this is not something we can pull forward right now, but it has potential that it could be by the third month of that quarter. Once you start realizing in having the conversations, and once the reality is this is a current quarter deal, then yes, like then I believe that do change that close date at that point, but only when you realize it's a current quarter deal, not to again hoping that
Yeah.
it's going to come in, but like,
Well,
okay, no, we've got the right people on board. We understand what it's going to take to get this in, the decision criteria, the legal the process, all of that has been identified, and we know that we can get that done within the time constraints, and they're on board too. Perfect. Let's pull it in.
well, and I think this is one of those things too that highlights, like some of the challenge of being in a sales role. You can never be 100% tunnel vision on just the current quarter.
Oh no. Well, and
Yeah.
because it's like, then it depending on what your sales process is, if you aren't at least got some peripheral vision in what's happened next quarter, I mean, you're setting yourself up to always be in a scrambling scenario that's
With
always
reactive.
chaos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you've got to be building pipeline. You've got to know what is happening this quarter, but also next quarter. Great. All right. So now we want to dig a little bit more into the science piece. So we know AI it's all the rage right now. Everybody's all over it. AI everything. And when it comes to the forecast, we need to bring AI into it as well. And so being able to have that, AI prediction on deals to understand, which deals is the AI picking, to give you visibility of that, but also to help you understand and get your gut check. I mean, this is your gut check of here's what I'm forecasting, here's what my team is forecasting, here's what the best case number is. What's the data saying?
Yeah, and I love it because it's a second set of eyes looking at all of these same things and trends and things we care about, because we have the benefit of understanding our AI very well and the factors it's taking into consideration. So it is really helpful because, like my team, we'll each kind of take a pass at like what our call would be for the quarter as well, and then kind of like compare it against the AI. And it's really helpful to
Oh
have
yeah,
that
absolutely.
additional lens.
Yeah, yeah. And what, our customers have started doing is, because we can surface that at the deal level also, in being able to see, here's what the health of the opportunity is the AI calling this into this quarter, or not. And so, in the way that they look at the individual deal inspection, but then also just the way that they look at that overall number, is the forecast realistic, is very helpful. All right. So one of the things you mentioned was the way that some of the visibility that we have into the AI. We like to call it black box AI, where it's like, okay, how do we get to this number? And one of the ways we do that is really by showing you that past performance that's tied to the current pipeline. So being able to understand, how much does each level of my, each of my users, my reps, what's their win rate? What's their push rate of their commits, of their upside deals, of their pipeline deals across stages, so that on the first day of the quarter that you can see, you might not have all commit deals right now, but I can see what the potential is based on what my pipeline is, what's expected to close across my entire pipeline, because I've done this consistently over the last 5 quarters.
Well, and this is where, I like to get way too granular and accept, but it's where it can be really interesting, to look at it by segment, by vertical, by industry, like which, it helps kind of refine some of that IC ideal customer profile, the ICP, favorite. Oh, RevOps, we love acronyms. Um, but it helps, like, you know, some of it, like looking at that at the rep level, it's huge for coaching from a sales perspective. From a
Mhm.
RevOps perspective, I like looking at it rep agnostic, like company wide
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
like region
So you
based.
get, and that's where it's like, I can see it company wide to be able to see, okay, from that top down, where are we at? And where directors can dig in with their reps of, okay, here's the number I'm calling. And that's where it's like, wait, just a second. You mean you have to close 100% of these opportunities to hit that number, but based on what the past performance is showing, you're only going to close 25%. Like,
Yeah, it
how do we
enables
get
our
there?
teams to kind of have some of those radically candid
Yeah,
conversations.
yeah. And so they know what they need to do. That it's like, okay, if this is my close rate and this is what I normally push, then I can tell how much pipeline I need to be successful. And if I want to blow out that quota because I want to hit those escalators and I want to make it to President's Club this year, then I can see what I need to do. It's not hidden from me. All the visibility
Yeah.
is there. Yeah, so that's exciting. Okay, so the last piece is looking at, and understanding deal velocity and sales efficiency. So you mentioned a little bit before, looked at like understanding deal strengths. You looked at, what's the sales cycle time and how our pipeline progression and all of that. So being able to have that visibility of what's happening all the way down to that rep level to know, where deals are getting stuck and where reps need to be coached individually. How does that help the RevOps team?
I mean, it helps us prioritize what we need to work on as a RevOps team too, is like where are things getting stuck? What processes are associated to this sales stage? Is there something that's taking too long on the Exactly side that's taking us, maybe longer than we'd like to get back to our customers and prospects? And how can I help from a RevOps perspective streamline some of those processes? Like, I think about it from that perspective, as well as, from a sales efficiency, sales enablement, GSP perspective, like, and product, like, are there certain like competitive scenarios we're seeing where we need to have different information to help support the reps? It all kind of ties back to that sales process and how can we continue to execute at a higher and higher clip.
Oh, I love that. And being able to then have that agility in the ability to then inform the deal health score and be able to adjust the forecast and surface that risk so that you can drive the right behaviors is what is taking number 10 to the next level. Because if you're surfacing that data, but you can't do anything with it, or you're
So
not
you're not doing anything to improve or change it.
improve it. Yeah. Or like you're not driving a consistent process anyway. So it's not meaningful to you that it's like everybody's doing their own thing, that really helps take the way your processes and your methodology to the next level to drive action and change behavior.
Yeah, and it's really helpful too to look at, like I think one of the reports we have is like highest stage reached, or like
Mm.
where are we seeing things fall in or out, or if things are getting qualified out early stage, how are we staying engaged to bring them back in? And then are those types of opportunities ones that move faster once they're in? And
Oh,
like it's so easy to go so overboard, but I think like these 10 things are really good ones to have your hands and your arms around to get really accurate, and then start identifying those processes and projects like for your RevOps team to help
yeah.
even get
Oh,
these things more improved.
oh, I love that, Bailey. Yeah, no, that's great. So this has been so helpful today. And I think one thing that I think would be really meaningful is kind of moving over to the demo to show what this looks like in real time. And what it could look like whenever you're forecasting, putting your forecast together on a forecast call. So what I want to do is kind of talk through what it looks like to put these 10 things into play. So what we're looking at right now is our forecast module. And these are all different metrics. And so you'll see a lot of the metrics that we've talked about are highlighted in some way here across these different metrics. But ultimately, what we're doing is being able to look at this from Arthur Hawkins, who is the VP of North America, in being able to see, okay, quota, he's got the number that he needs to hit is 16 million. And we've talked about, all right, here's what we've closed one so far. So his forecast call, he's got 15.2 million. And one way he can do is drill in and be able to see what is the deal backing of this forecast. What are the deals that I'm calling in? What are the deals that I'm calling out? And does the health agree with what the AI is predicting? So being able to see if those are aligned. So being able to look in at one that maybe the health score is a medium and the AI is calling true, to see, what's happening on this deal itself, so that you can see the individual strengths and weaknesses of the opportunity, and what needs to happen before the AI is going to call this in. And so being able to see that, on this opportunity here, that there's no momentum whatsoever. There's no engagement with the prospect. This looks like it's a good account. But and we're doing the selling process, but we're not engaging with the key player here, the economic buyer. And I know, Bailey, we have tons of conversations about this internally, of when that economic buyer is not engaged and we don't have their the stakeholders involved in these conversations, it slows the deal down. And so being able to identify what that looks like, as well as making sure that we're getting that meeting, is going to be crucial here. So this is ultimately making that opportunity health score come to life, and to get value from it.
Yeah, and I love how this is structured because, like, the MedPick, the sales methodology side, it's like it's showing I've done my homework, I've identified the right things, and then the momentum is like, but are they on the ride with me?
Yeah, yeah. And and I started out strong here. But now it's like I'm not following up, the customer's not engaged. I don't have a recent meeting, nothing scheduled. So I mean, this is a rough one. But being able to see as we get to like a stronger deal, the rep here, geez, in the demo right now, not much activity for the meetings, but being able to see that, okay, the rep is following up. This is a deal that's never been pushed. We have had the economic buyer engaged, and identified, but it's been over 7 days since we've met with them and we don't have a meeting scheduled. So this is crucial. Looks like the rep is trying to get that meeting scheduled. And so staying on top of that in the last 3 days. So being able to create some momentum next week is going to be crucial to get this deal back on track and over the line. All right. So being able to make these, see and click into the health score to see what's happening, to be able to see that, like, okay, maybe, I want to pull, these are the deals I want to pull out of the forecast. So I know what is backing up my forecast. What are the deals that I'm calling in versus calling out, so that I can identify what that gap is. So in the demo, we've got just 12 days left before the end of this quarter. And so being able to see what is needed to be able to hit my number. And so we can see what my commit and my roll up is, what my team is rolling up to me, that 16.5 million, which is, I'm hedging quite a bit on that, which we saw when I clicked in and had zeroed out the deals. But what my best case call is, being able to pull in the commit, the upside, and what is expected to be created and closed in time is bringing me that 15.8. While at the same time surfacing what are my high risk opportunities. So what are the deals that I need to bring the village in, or these deals that they were forecasted and they shouldn't be in the forecast any longer. And maybe these are deals that need to be pushed out. Something happened, like a sales leader has left, or, something, budget got pulled or something like that. So being able to drill into make sense of that, but also being able to identify what are those potential pull forward deals that we can look at if those are needed, while we're also breaking down what is the AI prediction. So we saw up here when we drilled in that we can see what the AI prediction is across against that health score to be able to see, is the AI calling this in? But this is also helping me understand that there's 13.7 million that is open or won today. And I can see all of those opportunities when I drill in of what is expected to come in and have that deal backed, as well as what is my create and close across my team. So this is going to help me understand across the quarter, what is each individual team member expected to bring in and close throughout the quarter, and then what is that total number? So we're helping you make sense of how these deals are formed, how this number is formed. And then we talked about the coverage and the total pipeline. But another way that we dig into this is with those historicals. So what this is helping is, as you are making sense of, all right, I've got, 1.4 million in commit today, what of that can I really expect that is going to be created and closed, or is going to be closed within this quarter? Helping me understand that, 16% of that is going to be pushed out. Doesn't mean they're not going to win it. They're going to end up winning it, but they're not going to win it till next quarter. And I'm going to win 28%. So of that 1.4 million, I can only count on the almost 500K and so on as I go down my different categories, so that I can make sense of what this looks like this quarter, but also start to look at what's sitting in my pipeline for next quarter. And what does that start to look like for next quarter? So we can already see for next quarter, this is not looking great, considering that my quota this quarter, 16 million, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be 6 million next quarter. And so knowing that we better get some pipeline generated. But then of course that, as we talked about, that create and close in the quarter, this is going to give you a breakdown across your quarter of what is expected to be created and closed in the quarter. And what Bailey had said, as we were talking, is how this is helpful coming in, but also driving the behaviors of the reps and so on. So you can see that, like a team, like this North America team, can see there's only 12 days left. So 12 days, most people are like, whatever's in the pipeline's in the pipeline. Like, we just got to close it. But this is saying, no. There's still almost 400K that we expect that you're going to create and close, because you've done this consistently over the last 3 quarters. So we believe you're going to do it again. Go find it. So where is it at? So being able to surface those items in the white space is going to be helpful as well. Bailey, is there anything that you would add here that sticks out to you that you haven't been able to mention yet?
I think it just kind of goes back to the narrative we've been talking about, where, like, yes, like the focus of the forecast call is generally your current quarter, but we're always looking ahead.
Yes. Yep.
And looking back. What we've done. Like,
yes, it's like, if you want to keep that momentum going, keep the success going. And we know pipeline generation is key, that it's like, we want to keep creating the pipeline. And so as we look at these reports here, that it's like, this is the way we're looking at the pipeline, driving linearity. We don't want all of the opportunities being expected to close in that 3rd month, because we know most of the time, if it's sitting in the last couple weeks of the quarter, that your rep probably doesn't know the timeline, because they're just putting it at the end.
It's in a parking lot.
Yeah, it's a parking lot. It's, I've got the quarter to close it. So being able to get linearity there to have that coaching conversation, but also understanding the health of the pipeline, that it's like, we don't want an overinflated pipeline. We want to make sure that we have healthy pipe, that we're surfacing the risk, we're getting rid of the opportunities that should be disqualified. We don't want to waste time on deals, accounts that aren't a good fit for our business or our software. We want to make sure that we're focusing the time, doing more with less. And so being able to spot the risk, being able to quickly understand what's the deal age. So it's like, if you're sitting on, you've got a 90-day sales cycle, but the majority of your pipeline is over 120 days old, then all of this is a huge coaching opportunity. This needs to be identified. There needs to be understanding of what truly needs to be there. We need to get rid of it so that we're not having a false sense of security that we have the coverage that we need to close the pipeline or to hit that number.
And I think the other thing that all of this helps raise too is like, this is a cross-functional effort. None of this should be on sales alone because there's efficiencies to be gained from all other parts of the organization
Absolutely. And
from
we
this
will
data.
definitely, we'll be digging into like pipeline generation and how we dig in with marketing. That it is, I love that you mentioned that it is, our forecasting solution is a cross-functional tool, that it's like, we have our marketing team is in it, our legal team is in it, our PS team, our product team, finance, the renewals team, customer success. It's like, they're all engaging with it because the forecasting data is used to make the most important decisions in the business, and everyone is needing a piece of that data to be able to drive their portion of the business. Very good. Well, Bailey, this has been so helpful. Having you on here with me today, it's always a joy to get to spend extra time with you. Love all of the different tidbits and tips and tricks that you always give us.
For having me.
So thank you so much. Appreciate you. Looks like we have a giveaway. So I think the first day of spring is actually today, which is early. And we were thinking about that probably had to do with the fact that it was leap year, because I don't remember a year that was on the 19th. I feel like it's always like the 20th or 21st. But happy first day of spring. And so our winner of our spring picnic basket is George Altman. So congratulations, George. And I believe someone in marketing will be in touch with you to get that. So yay, George. But if there's not any additional questions, then I think we are done for now. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a joy to have you all here, and look forward to our next webinar, which will be coming up soon. So definitely keep an eye out for those. Thanks so much and have a great rest of your day.